My name is Joe Glasscock, and I was in the Navy during World War II from 42 to 46. I came out of a theater in Goldsboro, North Carolina, where we were living. And the streets were just about dark, and no street lights. And so I walked home, and everybody was crowded around a radio. And that's when I found out December the 6th, which was my birthday. And I turned 18 that day. And Pearl Harbor was December the 7th. And it was on Sunday afternoon that I found out about Pearl Harbor. We're at war with Japan. And I had seen a short on Japan, and they expert knife throwers. And I thought, boy, that'd be something to come up against. I was in Edwards Military Institute in North Carolina, and in 43 I got orders to appear at the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. And I stayed there, and at a rate that I'd never faced before. They threw eight subjects at you, and some of them I didn't know anything about. So I ended up going to, after the first quarter, I could have stayed or go ahead into service. Well, I elected to go into the Navy, and I was at Bainbridge, Maryland, and I stayed at Bainbridge, Maryland for about 3 months, and then I got bounced around from one thing to another, and I was at Pier 92 in New York, which was a Navy receiving ship or receiving station. And I woke up one morning and I looked out the window, and there sat the biggest ship I'd ever seen in my life. It was the English ship SS Queen Elizabeth, and the bow extended out over the street in New York. But prior to that, a group of us had been called to, they were making up a convoy for England. And we missed that convoy because it ran into a German wolf pack, and half the ships were sank. And so when I saw the Queen Elizabeth, I thought, that's where I'm going. And sure enough, it took a week to refuel that and resupply it, and we were told they had 17,500 soldiers on it. They loaded them, and they held the 600 sailors, they held us back, and so we felt that was a courtesy to us. But they loaded us on. And on a Saturday afternoon, we found out we were leaving that day. And I thought, when they back this thing out and they start the motors, I want to be on the fantail to see how much at the bottom comes up. Well, the tugboats took us out to the Hudson River, and I found my spot on the fantail. And when they started those 3 propellers, the bottom came up. It was a very muddy situation, and we, but it was very smooth, and we were low in the water, and we could tell it. We went up the Hudson River, and they had a gate on the river to try to keep any submarines from coming in. And we went through the gate, and everything went very smoothly. We got 2 meals a day, one in the morning, one at the afternoon. And on Thursday afternoon, the emergency bells went off, and they had made contact with a submarine. And we had zigzagged all the way up till then. And when they said they'd made contact with a submarine, they threw that ship in high gear. And from then on, it was shake, rattle, and roll. On Saturday morning, we pulled into Scotland. And but the thing about the Queen Elizabeth, it was so fast, it could outrun U.S. destroyers. And I was told that some destroyers had tried to escort it, and they burned the motors up in that destroyer because Queen Elizabeth ran off and left them. We ended up at Plymouth, England, which was an all-night ship, all-night trip. And the first night there, we got a taste of what the war was all about, because the Germans, they sent V-2s over, and but thank goodness they kept going. But the Germans, they had not perfected the guidance system. They knew how much fuel to put in it and how long it would fly. And that was a saving grace for us. And I stayed there at Plymouth, and we were going to be replacements on ships that had made the invasion at Normandy. And they were getting ready for the invasion of Italy. And but not any of us had received our gear, so we had nothing except the clothes we were wearing. So they scratched us. About a week later, they put us on a mine layer, and we crossed the English Channel and landed at Cherbourg. And then we were told later about 4 hours after we got off that mine layer, it hit a mine, and it went down with all hands. Really what they had planned, Brest, France, was on the English Atlantic Ocean side. And the Germans had built submarine pens, and we were a dock repair group. 8th Air Force bombed the H out of those pens to the point they were useless, and it was too much to repair. And so they pulled us out of there, went up into Scotland, and we stayed up in Scotland. And then we came back down, and the day that the Germans surrendered, I was crossing the English Channel again, going back to France. We didn't know it at the time, but we were headed up to Bremerhaven, Germany. And we were going to be running that port. And they were afraid to send a ship, any of our vessels, into Bremerhaven because of the mine situation. We went back to Ostend, Belgium, and got on these big 10-wheeler trucks, and we went by land for about 3 days, and we slept on the ground at night in a sleeping bag, and so we got to Bremerhaven, and the one thing that I strictly remember, if you were going out to the docks from where we were staying, you went right by a air raid shelter, and we were told that air raid shelter held about 4,000 people, and it took a direct hit, and it killed everybody in it. They sealed that air raid shelter and never did anything with it. And to this day, I don't know if they ever opened it up or not. When we had that long truck ride, the first town we hit was Aachen, Germany. And the only building standing was a church, and a church steeple. And how they bombed everything else to the ground and didn't hit that church, we never could figure it out. I remember when Germany surrendered, we were still at war in the Pacific. And when I was up in Scotland, they had all petty officers. They wanted, if we wanted to, volunteer, take the test for the Naval Air Corps. And 3 of us out of 150 passed the test, the mental and the physical. They flew me back, and the day I landed in the Naval Air Station, President Truman, he announced that the atomic bomb had been dropped. Nobody knew what the atomic bomb was. And then that was a secret that we kept, and this country kept it. When that happened, bunch of us figured, well, they gonna cut back on everything, but they sent us down to Northwestern University in Lafayette, Louisiana, and we got in there about 4 o'clock in the morning, and at 7 they had us in the CO's office, and he said, boys, if you don't sign up for 4 years, regular Navy, we don't want you. Out of 14, 11 of us said, we've had enough. So I went on, they sent us to Camp Elliott outside of San Diego. And I worked in the 11th Naval District headquarters until I was discharged. So that's about my World War II adventure. When we were at Roscoff, about 10 miles behind the 7th, the U.S. 7th Army, and the 8th Air Force was bombing the hell out of the submarine pens, and the ground shook, and the light, it was so daylight you could see the headlines on a newspaper. And that went on for several weeks. When we were at Cherbourg, France, the Germans had left a bunch of what they call 80-day mines. And these mines would come up, and if they hit a ship, they would go off. So you didn't know, and every ship moved every day. You didn't know if you were moving on one or off. So that was a little, we wondered, is this the day? I'll tell you, you're looking for heroes, those boys that went in on D-Day at Normandy. They are the heroes. We are faced today what we were faced with when Hitler was running wild. And we are in much better shape today to put a stop to some of this. Now, a lot of people today don't do anything to make these people mad. Well, if they're going to put us in slavery, I don't care if they get mad or not. You grow up fast. You look out for yourself, stay out of trouble, and hope you survive. I got back home the latter part of a week, and I remember when I landed in Maryland, they already had announced the dropping of the atomic bomb. Well, about Tuesday or Wednesday of the following week that I got home, Japan surrendered. And they didn't have not a plan, but everybody went downtown, and if they had a car, they were riding up and down one street, hollering, blowing the horn, and just a very happy occasion. And if you had survived, you felt very fortunate. In December of '44, I believe, when when Germany made the last push at the Battle of the Bulge, boy, they were picking up everybody. alerting everybody, boys, get ready, because you might be going back to France or Germany, because that's how rough it was. But we never did. We went back, but it was not for that reason. Well, I didn't want to be in the Army, and I felt like the Navy would suit me better, and that's the reason I elected the Navy. My main concern, I guess, was to stay alive. I wanted to survive. There was no doubt that I was going into the service. And I felt like we had been wronged with Japan with that sneak attack. And they paid a price for it. They paid a price for it. Well, every time I got leave, that was a good time. They took good care of you. I got no complaints. Just some things about the military I don't care for, but I can't change that. It's nice to have the Veterans Day, and that's people remembering, and they know what has been done, and just to let the day go by with nothing would be a big mistake. And the ones that did the heavy lifting, our heroes. Got to remember what they did. War is hell. There's no two ways about it. But sometimes I don't think you can't get away from it. Well, I keep it on the mailbox. I don't know if you noticed or not. And when I see these people burning the flag, I think somebody ought to kick them in the you-know-what. It's to be revered and honored, because there's been a lot of blood spilled over it, protecting it. You see these amputees today, and I think, God, how do they live with it? But the war today is quite different than the war back then. You could see the enemy, and you had lines. Today, you don't have any lines drawn. You don't know who is your enemy and who's friendly.